All right, let's go ahead and get started. My name is Giselle Goycochea. Couple things here. So welcome to the Data and AI Summit. We have the distinct honor of being one of the first sessions right out of the gate on Tuesday. Um, this is a slide we have to show. Very important. Presentation for informational purposes only. Of course, as we continue to develop this product, it may contain forward-looking statements. All right, so it's fitting we're up first on Tuesday since we want to help you learn all the basics on Lakeflow Connect and efficient data ingestion into your lakehouse and how to get started. The rest of the week, we have a ton more Lakeflow Connect sessions here at Summit from our SMEs and from our customers. So please be sure to check your schedule. All right, so let's introduce ourselves. My name is Giselle Goycochea. I'm the Lakeflow Connect product marketing lead, previously PMM for a few years at AWS. Peter Pogorski is a Lakeflow Connect product manager and previously a PM at Microsoft. He'll be up here shortly doing an amazing demo that we have for you today. All right, so we've got lots we want to cover today, so you can learn more about Lakeflow Connect. We'll start kind of with the current data ingestion landscape, probably things you're dealing with right now. We'll talk about the basics of the product. Like I said, Peter will do that demo on Lakeflow Connect in action with a fictitious Spark paper company. We'll review our roadmap, some exciting releases, how to get started, reference some customer stories, and finally, we'll wrap with some frequently asked questions and obviously take questions from you all. All right, so let's talk about your data and what you are probably dealing with now. Now, before you can take advantage of Databricks, you have to be able to access your data. And that data is probably all over the place. You have it in SaaS applications like Salesforce, Workday, ServiceNow, Google Analytics. You have databases like SQL Server, Postgres, Oracle. You have file sources, message buses, and APIs, and so on. So it can be really difficult to get that data into your lakehouse so that you can do meaningful things with it. So what are the challenges? To start, pipelines are hard to set up, creating inefficiencies. SaaS APIs have a ton of quirks and can be pretty difficult to wrap up on. They also change a lot, so it's hard to keep up with them. Database pipelines are even harder to configure and manage, especially without impacting the source. So customers do a lot of work to build these pipelines, as you know, to optimize them, and particularly to maintain them. So spending time on all this can get super expensive and it slows your time to value. It doesn't help these pipelines often require a specialized data engineer, so the people who need to use this data downstream, the analysts, the ML engineer, get blocked. This is the opposite of democratization with silos and low productivity. You might not even want to democratize the data when you have a patchwork of pipelines because it's so hard to govern it effectively. There is no holistic data view and issues with unified access control, lineage, monitoring. So at the end of the day, you're not fully utilizing your data. Your teams are probably running into pipeline outages and you have underutilized data. You might even have some security risks. So Databricks has done a ton of work already to address this. Let's review some of the existing solutions that we can help you contextualize where we are today with our portfolio. So at the most customizable level of the stack, we have structured streaming. This is where, this is an API for incremental stream processing in near real time. Engineers love the performance, the scalability, fault tolerance, but over time, they ask for more automation and less overhead. They wanted better auto scaling, data quality constraints, failure recovery, and so on. So we added DLT, a framework for building reliable and scalable data pipelines. You define the transformations to perform on your data, manage orchestration, monitoring data quality, errors, and customers love that it reduced the complexity while also improving the performance of their pipelines. Then we heard more demand for something that's even easier to set up, even more hands-off, even more when you're dealing with those complex data sources. You don't want to spend your time learning about those SaaS APIs and all of their edge cases. You don't want to deal with the networking complexity of on-prem databases. This is why we launched Managed Connectors on Lakeflow Connect. We recently went GA for Salesforce and Workday, and we'll talk about those here shortly. But it's important to note that Lakeflow Connect now is not synonymous with connectors. For example, Autoloader can currently be used to ingest from cloud storage with both structured streaming and DLT. We also offer connectors for Kafka, Kinesis, PubSub, and Pulsar at those layers. And over time, we intend to provide more managed versions of those same connectors in the Lakeflow Connect layer 2. So in the fullness of time, instead of focusing on what data sources I have or what layer of the stack I'm in, the question will be how much management versus customization do I actually want? So Lakeflow Connect, as I said before at the very beginning, is efficient data ingestion into your lakehouse. Look at all those data sources. We'll get into the specifics of each release and roadmap a little bit later. Now, before we dig into Lakeflow Connect and what it actually is, it's important to take a step back and ask, what is Lakeflow? You'll hear lots more about Lakeflow here at Summit. Just a show of hands, how many of you know what Lakeflow is? Okay, a few of you. So Databricks Lakeflow is a unified intelligent solution for data engineering built on the Data Intelligence Platform. So as you can see here, you have 3 components. Today, we're only talking about the first, ingestion with Connect. Okay, so what does efficient ingestion into your lakehouse mean? Let's get into some of the key benefits of Lakeflow Connect. First, it's simple and low maintenance. You can set up a production-ready pipeline in just a few steps. And once you've set a connector up, it's also fully managed with schema evolution, observability, alerts, automated retries, SCD type 2, and more. This lowers your maintenance costs, but more generally, it means you can spend less time moving data and more getting value from that data. Second, it's efficient end-to-end. This is because it uses incremental reads and writes. And since ingestion is just step 1, we actually write the data to support incremental processing downstream as it works its way through the medallion architecture. Along the way, it has a simple, cost-efficient pricing model, which we'll talk about more, that's simply based on the compute used by your pipelines. Finally, it's unified with your existing Databricks tools with built-in governance, so you can take advantage of all the goodness that comes from Databricks. For example, this product is governed by Unity Catalog and is orchestrated via Databricks workflows. It also integrates with Databricks asset bundles for CI/CD and Lakehouse monitoring for data quality. All right, so I'm going to talk about the releases very quickly. We'll kind of go through some of the ones you may have seen and may have heard of. We have a customer, Porsche. Porsche Holding, one of the leading auto manufacturers in Europe, who is saying 85% faster production using this connector. And you'll hear from them at Summit as well. Lakeflow Connect for Workday also released GA, and this is a critical a connector for many of our customers to help unlock the data from Workday reports. So you can actually have those centralized analytics on your employee workforce. Google Analytics, this is new, just went GA. So you have built-in integration for GA for event level data. This was a very in-demand request from our customers, so really excited about this one. All fields are supported. We also have Lakeflow Connect for ServiceNow. This also went GA. This is new. And you're able to basically get integration with ServiceNow so you can do things for analytics and feature road mapping. SharePoint is also new. This is one that is available in beta. So this is available to most customers, and it has support for history tracking, pipeline observability, UC lineage, but it supports all formats as unstructured data. Sorry, there is a little issue with the font. And then SFTP is also new. Public preview is coming soon, so for those of you who want to access this, please make sure to reach out to your account teams so you can get access to this, but right now it's in private preview. And finally, actually we have 2 more. From PostgreSQL, another one that's been highly requested by customers. This supports all major variations and on-prem. Private preview is available now, so you do need to request that from your account teams. And finally, SQL Server. We are in public preview right now. GA is coming soon. It supports many SQL Server environments, as you can see listed here. Change tracking, CDC, SCD type 2 is coming soon, but all data types supported, including geometric data types. All right, so that was quite a lot. Let's just do a quick recap. So when we think about our connectors, we've got applications, file sources, databases. So you can see where the current release status is for that. And actually, if you check out our website, you can also see this through the documentations, where we have extensive step-by-step instructions on how to get set up, troubleshooting, and all of those FAQ questions that you might have. All right. And then in addition to this, I'm happy to announce a new set of connectors. Now, these are different in the sense that we're trying to expand our breadth of data sources to include databases and data warehouses. Peter will actually cover these more in depth in his demo, so he'll give you some more context about that. And speaking of Peter, Peter is going to do his amazing demo about this Spark paper company. So let's turn it over to Peter.
Awesome. So as Giselle was mentioning, I'm going to be talking about the Spark Paper Company today. And usually I'm a product manager at Databricks, but for the demo purpose today, I'm a data engineer at the Spark Paper Company. So the Spark Paper Company is a regional paper company with branches across the Northeast. And the Spark Paper Company has a lot of disparate data sources that have created information silos where information is limited to branches and departments. This prevents comprehensive business visibility and results in suboptimal critical decision making. And then there's Joe, our CEO, who wants to make her decisions based on data. And she wants the confidence that this data is accurate, and she wants the ability to deep dive into any specific trend at any point in time. And then we have Ryan. He's our data engineer. He's trying to keep up with the constant asks from the CEO, and he's struggling to keep data from all these disparate data sources centralized and up to date. So for the purposes of this demo, I'm going to be Ryan. So what disparate data sources do I need to ingest and transform data from in order to answer Joe's questions? First, we have Salesforce. Includes all of the customer details and opportunities. Then we have Google Analytics, which includes all of the marketing activities. Teradata, which includes all the historical records of customer purchases. And then finally, SQL Server, which includes the information about our suppliers and our inventory. And before our Lakeflow Connect, I probably would have ingested this data using a combination of different tools. For example, I might need extraction software that's running on a virtual machine. And this means I need to think about what kind of infrastructure to allocate, what scale I'm going to need, and how I can keep that software up. I might create a message bus that subscribes to all of the events that are generated from my source. And then finally, I'd write custom code to capture those events in a notebook, and then use structured streaming to get the data into my lakehouse. And while this solution works, it's probably going to take me a long time to set up. I'm then also going to need to worry about the ongoing maintenance. And if there's a change on one of the source APIs, it's possible things could break entirely. Now with Lakeflow Connect, I can ingest data into the lakehouse without that complexity. All I need to focus on is what data I need to ingest. So now we'll start in my Databricks workspace. Here I can see all of the connectors and previews that I'm able to ingest from. I'm going to click on Salesforce to first bring in data about our customers and our sales opportunities. Once in here, I'll give the pipeline a name. I'm going to call it the Spark Paper Salesforce pipeline. and then I'll select a location for the event log. So even though this is a fully managed service, you're still able to find your critical event logs and cluster logs. So you can be confident that you know what's going on under the hood. And then finally, I'll select a Unity catalog connection that stores my Salesforce credentials. If I didn't already have one, I could easily create a new one right here using OAuth. And once I select that, I'm ready to create my pipeline and fetch the source schema. So I'll click next. And on this step, the connector is pulling the schema of the data that's available for me to ingest. And it's restricted to whatever data that the authenticated user actually has access to. So we're always going to respect your source permissions and only pull those tables. And now we know that the schema can evolve over time, and Lakeflow Connect can already handle a lot of different types of schema evolution. For example, it will automatically ingest new columns. So I'll select a couple of tables to ingest. First, I'll select the account table to determine what customers we have at Spark Paper Company. And then I'll search for the opportunities table to determine how we can expand our market. And as I'm doing that, you can see that users can select and deselect individual columns without having to ingest the entire table. So that means if you have certain junk columns that you don't actually want to ingest, you can simply exclude them or choose to include them again. And once I've selected the data to ingest, I'm going to decide where to put it within my lakehouse. I can use a destination schema that already exists, or I could create a new one in line. And if you're using our API, you could also write to multiple destinations per pipeline. For example, table A to schema A, and table B to schema B. So now I'm going to click through, and it will validate all of the setup I've just done on my source and destination. And then once we get to the settings page, I can choose to create a new schedule for my pipeline, or I can just keep the default schedule that was already created. I can also create notifications to determine when my pipeline succeeded or when it failed. So finally, after all of that setup, I'll save and run my pipeline, and we can see data start to ingest from Salesforce. So I'll be taken to the pipeline monitoring page, where I can monitor the status of all the tables that I've ingested, and I can see records ingested into both the account and opportunity tables. And next, I want to actually ingest my historical sales data from Teradata to determine how my branch sales are performing compared to my online sales. So to do this, I'm going to use one of our new expanded breadth ingestion connectors that Giselle just announced. So these connectors enable you to ingest from sources without the need to make any source modification. You don't need to enable CDC, you don't need to create replication slots, you can just get started right away. And we're able to incrementally ingest data by leveraging both a primary key and a cursor column. And if these columns aren't actually available on a table, we're still able to ingest the data, but we will do so using a batch-based method. And these connectors are coming soon, and they'll support all of the sources which are currently available via Lakehouse Federation. So coming back to the Add Data page, this time I'm going to select the Teradata tile. And then once I'm in the wizard, I'll once again provide a name to the pipeline. I'll call it Spark Paper Teradata Pipeline. And then I'll once again select an event log location within the Spark Paper Company catalog. I'll then, after selecting the schema, select a Unity catalog connection that I've already created to my Teradata instance. And then I'm ready to create my pipeline and continue. So on this step, the connector is once again pulling the schema of data that's available for me to ingest. Here I'm going to select from the Teradata historical catalog and select the customer, order, and product table. For each of these tables, I'm going to select a primary key and a cursor column so that they can be ingested incrementally. For customers, it will be the customer ID and the last updated column. For orders, it will be an order ID and then a last update column. And finally, for product, it will be product ID and the last updated column as well. So once I do that, we can move on to select the destination schema and catalog. Here, I'll pick to ingest into the Teradata historical sales schema, and then I can save and continue. And then once again on the settings page, I can choose to create a new schedule for my pipeline, or I can just keep a default schedule that's been created. And I could also create a new notification. So I'll click to save and run the pipeline. And just like with Salesforce pipeline, I'm going to land on the monitoring page, where I can see the status of the tables that I've selected for ingestion. I can see that I've ingested 5,000 records from the customer and orders table, and then 10 records from the product table. So now that I've completed ingesting my data, I've also set up other pipelines to ingest data from Postgres and Google Analytics. I'm still going to need to transform and orchestrate the data that I'm bringing in so that it's useful for my organization. I'm going to need to clean and standardize that data across the sources so that I know I have high quality data that's providing the most accurate insights and best business outcomes. So I'm going to need to join the data across sources. For example, I'll need to join my marketing data from Google Analytics with my sales data from Teradata in order to determine the influence of a marketing campaign on our sales. And to do all of this, I'm going to create a DLT pipeline and use declarative statements to create materialized views along the medallion architecture. So I'll now go into the Lakeflow DLT pipeline editor to do my transformations. In this IDE-like editor, I can see all of my source code and a generated DAG, which shows the relationship between all of my tables. So I pre-created this pipeline with 3 transformation files representing the bronze, silver, and gold layers of the medallion architecture. Let's jump in and take a look at some of the transformations that I'm performing at the silver layer with the data that I ingested using Lakeflow Connect. For the first materialized view that I'm creating, I want to ensure that I have high quality data on the historical sales within my organization. I've heard that some of our salespeople have been recording as a sale as being made both online and at a branch in order to inflate the online sales numbers. And there's a young exec really hoping to prove that the company's bet on the online store was worth it. So I want to remove the junk data. I'm going to create an expectation which will drop any record that was recorded as both a branch and an online sale. And then I'm also going to want to join our sales data with the product data that have been ingested from Teradata. And this will enable me to see the product name related to each of our sales. Once I do that, I can click on the table in the DAG to see some of the sample data. And with that sample data, I can check if my transformations worked exactly as I expected. So in this table, I can see the sales type and the branch location. And it looks like Scranton has been selling a lot of new printers and copy paper. I'll then also need to join and clean the data from the other ingested sources. And the great part about Lakeflow Connect is that it makes it really easy to create a materialized view as it ingests data using streaming tables. So we'll only compute changes for the records that are updated rather than needing to recompute the entire table each time the source table is updated. So now that I've actually transformed my ingest data to be high quality, I'm going to use an AI BI dashboard to provide my organization with fast, secure visual insights. And then I'm going to use Genie to help my organization ask deep questions about our data. So I've started by creating an AI BI dashboard. Here, I can choose the data set, which will be used to generate visualizations. I'm going to select the gold tables that I generated in the DLT pipeline. And once the data sets are added, I can quickly and easily use AI to create new visualizations in addition to the ones that I've already created. Here, I can see that we sell a lot more from our branches compared to our online stores. But now I want to compare what the total number of sales are across each of the branch locations. I can simply click to add a visualization. I will then select the data set that I want to use for this visualization. And then I will ask the assistant to show what the total sales are by branch location. And then very quickly, I should see a graph comparing the sales across the different branch locations. And we can see that Scranton is by far leading the pack. But what if Joe, our CEO, is looking at these graphs and wants to ask even deeper questions? To help her do that, I can create a Genie space, which is configured on the context of the data in this dashboard. So in the past, she might wake me up at 2 a.m. to ask those deep questions, but now she will be able to self-serve via Genie spaces. And since we're using Lakeflow Connect to bring in the data that feeds these dashboards, I can be confident that the context of these answers is using the most up-to-date data from our sources. So let's ask Genie some questions. For example, I want to know who my top salesperson has been each month and how much their total sales amounted to. Genie will then think based on the data from our gold tables and will provide me with a report which shows the top salesperson each month. So just wait for it, and then the report will be generated. And now, if I want to dive even deeper, I could ask another follow-up question. I want to determine who my top salesperson is based on the number of months in which they've had the most sales. So we'll generate another report using those gold tables. And then once that comes back, we can see it's probably tied amongst Andy, Phyllis, and Stanley. So Genie Spaces makes it really quick and easy to answer any question that you might have about your data. And finally, I'm going to need to orchestrate all of the components that I've just put together. I want to make sure that any time new data is ingested into my gold tables, that the dashboard is updated. And I'm going to use workflows to orchestrate all of this across my ingestion pipelines, ETL pipelines, and AI BI dashboards. So within workflows, I'm able to create a DAG with all of the ingestion, transformation, and dashboard tasks, which also includes the dependencies between them. Here, I created 4 different ingestion tasks representing my ingestion pipelines, ingesting from 4 different sources. And if I wanted to, I could click to add a new task for a new notebook, a pipeline, or a dashboard. And then in the dependency graph, I've made the ETL pipeline dependent on all 4 ingestion pipeline tasks. So this means the ETL pipeline will run and update my gold table if any data lands in any of our sources. So this is going to ensure that my dashboards are updated as soon as new data is available. And then if I want to I'm going to want to add a schedule or a trigger to actually determine when this workflow runs. And here I'm going to add a schedule so that the workflow will run once per hour. And this is also going to trigger my ingestion pipeline tasks to run every hour. So to recap what you just saw in the demo, we were able to quickly and easily ingest incremental data into our bronze layer from Salesforce, Google Analytics, Teradata, and SQL Server using Lakeflow Connect. We then used Lakeflow DLT to clean up our data and joined it with data from other sources. And we created materialized views. And then with our data in our gold layer, we were able to generate visualizations to help our organization make decisions via AI BI dashboards, and provided the opportunity for Joe to have all of her questions answered by asking them directly in a Genie space. Finally, we orchestrated all of this using a workflow. Now looking forward, at the same time that we're improving connector breadth, we're also focusing on deepening the feature set of these connectors. So this is going to include things like query pushdown, which will allow you to filter data that you pull in. For example, to improve the performance of the initial data load. It also includes ACL ingestion, which will allow you to ingest permissions from data sources that are commonly used for AI downstream. For example, to limit the output of a chatbot based on a user. It also includes column level masking, which allows you to mask data mid-flight as you're ingesting it. For example, to mask PII coming from your HR system. And how is this priced? So all of our connectors are powered by a simple and efficient and entirely compute-based pricing model. You simply pay for the compute that's needed to run your pipelines, as well as any networking egress fees that may apply from your source. So pipelines for SaaS sources like Salesforce and Workday run exclusively on serverless, and they're going to incur serverless DBU charges. For database sources like SQL Server, the ingestion pipeline will run on serverless. However, ingestion gateways may run on classic or serverless, depending on the source. So as a result, you may receive a combination of classic and serverless DLT DBU charges. I'm now going to hand it back to Giselle to answer some of our most frequently asked questions.
Cool. Awesome. Am I back on? Yes. Okay. Well, that was a great demo. Um, really end to end for Lakeflow Connect. And I'm sure you'll have questions. But we're really excited about being able to showcase all those features here for you today. One of the things will take some time, and then I want to leave time for questions, is to kind of showcase some of the most popular questions we typically get. And then I'll leave it for open Q&A. All right, so does Lakeflow Connect cover all of ingestion? Well, we talked about this at the beginning. And so one of the things that we've kind of expanded, if you will, the umbrella of Lakeflow Connect is that yes, it covers all of ingestion as it relates to Databricks and the broader Lakeflow three components we discussed at the beginning. And so this covers managed connectors, DLT, which it covers autoloader, Kafka, Kinesis, and structured streaming. The key thing to remember is it's really how much you want to manage versus how much you want to customize. The next one is how does Lakeflow Connect work? And so there are distinctions between obviously SaaS connectors and database connectors, but really the basic components come down to the sources, the connection, the ingestion pipeline, and the destination. You can see all of this amazing or hear more about these in two deep dive sessions that we're having here at Summit. We're actually going to have one just on SaaS connectors and one on database connectors. So the database connectors will actually be hosted by Peter. We'll get into that. But those will be more technical in nature, and so you can get really into the specifics around how to work with the connectors. And then is the data encrypted? So, one of the things that is great about Databricks that you're able to really take advantage of is the Data Intelligence Platform. You have, built-in governance from Unity Catalog, which includes data encryption. And so when we get questions like, is data encrypted in transit? Is data encrypted at rest? It does vary based on SaaS and databases. But yes, the ingested data lives in UC storage, which is great, and it's encrypted. And there is no difference from other UC data sets. And then what features do each of these connectors currently support? So there's lots and lots of questions around, well, do you support this, such as UI, API, pipeline authoring, or support for incremental ingestion, or does it support SCD type 2? Basically, we have in our documentation a feature compatibility chart. I like to point this out because it helps solve a lot of these questions. So docs.databricks.com, we continually update the site as we're releasing new connectors. And then finally, how can we influence the product roadmap? So we get lots and lots of requests. As I mentioned, the documentation website is updated as they're released, but please, 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 I cannot stress this enough, reach out to your account teams to nominate any new connectors. And we actually do hear all of the feedback, and this helps drive the roadmap. So with that, I'll just very quickly go through some of the recommended sessions. So if you want to take a photo of this, these are the ones specifically for Lakeflow Connect. We've done all the work for you across Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. And then I'll just give a shout out to a few of the ones that I really think are can't miss. They're all great, but specifically the SaaS connectors database session that I mentioned before. This is with Manish and Andreas from Porsche Holding. They're going to do a fantastic session. Um, we've got Peter, who's going to do another fantastic session for databases with Brett. And then a session on Wednesday afternoon, which is the broader Lakeflow session with Bilal and Michael. This is really exciting about the future of data engineering. A couple of our great leaders from Databricks. And we've got another one that's more on the AI BI side, which is about intelligent document processing with Adam and Jason, which talks about unstructured data and focuses on the SFTP with Lakeflow Connect. And then finally, this one is a can't miss with Victoria and Nicola about how you can eliminate hops in your streaming architecture. This follows the keynote on Thursday, so definitely check those out. Okay, so we have time for just a few questions. If people want to ask anything, feel free to go to the mics that are there, and we will stay just a couple more minutes. Yep. Any questions?
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks everyone for joining, and please complete your surveys. These really help improve our content. Thank you.